I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of my favorite, the Andrew Huberman Podcast, just released a new episode this Monday. Now, what's cool about this podcast is that the guest that was on referenced experiments where the participants were able to increase their performance during training by cooling their muscles in between working sets. The premise is that muscle temperature increasing is a limiting factor on the amount of work that you can perform in an exercise. And by reducing the relative muscle temperature, you should, in theory, be able to do more work in your given exercise. There is a sweet spot for this temperature cooling though, so I think drawing this out is going to help a lot. So what I'm doing right now is separating what we're going to view as inside the muscle versus outside the muscle, with that dotted line being the skin in this example. And so as we're exercising, heat is increasing up inside the muscle, but it's also able to dissipate into the air outside, and so you're cooling down. But if we do too cold of inputs to the outside of the skin, we will have vasoconstriction. And what that's going to end up doing is actually locking in more of the heat. And so internal heat will increase more rather than cool off. The two spots on the body that were referenced as the easiest to cool down are the palms on the hand and the bottom of the feet, because those are areas that lack hair on the body. And initially my idea was just to fill up a bucket of water or pass around an ice pack, but I'm worried that that would be too cold and cause vasoconstriction. And so what I decided to do was to just fill up this container with water of room temperature. And so with that, it's going to be cooler than my internal body temperature, which will be around 98 degrees. Heat will dissipate easily throughout the water, but it won't be so cold that I'll have vasoconstriction and end up locking in that heat. For my choice in exercise for this experiment, I don't have a lot of dumbbell weight at my house with it. And so I decided that I would do a Bulgarian split squat, as it allows me to be able to use less weight but still have more intensity. The Bulgarian split squat is also a good choice for me because I have a lot of experience doing it from the past. And so I'll be able to have a good idea of whether this experiment has an impact on my strength and performance or not. If I were just picking a random exercise, it would be very difficult to tease out whether I was having improvements or not, because I wouldn't really have a baseline. After every set during my rest period, I would come over to this chair and just sit my feet inside the container. I kind of wiggled my toes around as a way of doing active recovery, but also to keep the water moving around to help speed up the cooling process. What I also decided to do was just set a towel right out in front, so all I had to do was just step out, dry off my feet, and I would be ready to get back into the next set. The idea is just to make this as seamless as possible with my current workout so that it's something that I can actually stick to in the future. And starting here, I'm getting into my actual working sets. I decided to do 50-pound dumbbells. As you can tell, it's sped up a lot because I typically lift with a tempo and it was obnoxiously slow. Okay, and so how long am I taking for my rest and recovery in between sets? During the discussion of the podcast, they spoke about using around 3 minutes of recovery rest time in between sets. And that works out pretty well for me personally because I typically take about 3 to 5 minutes in between my working sets for these types of workouts. Basically, I wait around long enough for my heart rate to get back under control and for my legs to feel like they can lift my body back up again. Now, during this experiment, I was only focusing on cooling through the bottoms of my feet, but in the future, I might try something like passing an ice pack slowly from hand to hand back and forth without keeping it in one hand too long as to have that vasoconstriction effect in them. But here's an example of me here right now, just sitting with my feet inside the room temperature water, and I just kept an eye on the watch for my recovery time in between sets. Frankly, with this one-time experiment so far, I was very, very excited to do this, and so I definitely did have an increase in performance. But I think more so sticking with this over time will show whether it was just me being mentally very excited today for it, or if it's actually something tangible long term. And so do I think that using something like this can really improve my gains in health and fitness? Honestly, I'm not sure. It's really hard to screen out for variables when you're doing an N=1 study, but the important thing is this is not a major intrusion onto my workouts. I'm comfortable doing it, and there's some scientific and anecdotal research that this has worked for people, so I'm willing to do it. I wanted to make this video this week because this is new information that I literally just found out about on this previous Monday. I want people to be excited when they hear things and take the leap to doing it. So many times it's easy to learn new information and then just sit on it and say, oh, that's cool, but never really experiment and try it on yourself. I'm going to continue using this water cool down experiment theory for the next couple of weeks and make tweaks and changes to it as I learn more about my body and the method. If you haven't checked out the Andrew Huberman podcast, I strongly suggest you go over there to take a look. It's really interesting. And additionally, I hope that this video has maybe given you the inspiration to try something new in your training for yourself.